All right. Hello and welcome to the community tournament that I will be hosting today. We have 8 open signups, and by the looks of it, we should have about 9 players that will be playing today. So as soon as I'm done this intro, we can get in with the check-in results and actually dive on into some matches. I'll be playing myself in this tournament, not playing myself, but anyways, you know what I mean. And it should be pretty fun. Sorry, there were a few hiccups earlier, which totally threw me off. Thank you for the subscribe, by the way. But yeah, there were a couple of webcam issues, and then some switching around of things that really changed things a whole ton. But anyways, if you're unfamiliar with this event, it's just going to be a nice, fun stream of the tournament, and I will have timestamps right after the video is posted so that you can skip ahead to any matches that you want to see. Now, with the intro out of the way, let's go ahead and actually oh yes, change the screen blocker. So this event does take advantage of the ladder, which has restarted, as you can see below. And now that I'm done the intro, I can actually start this tournament as soon as I can fix this thing up a tiny bit. Does this work? That doesn't work at all. Oh, I see what's going wrong. Oh my gosh. Everything's falling apart. Oh, right, there we go. There we go. Screen blocker is up. Now I can go ahead to the participants, check in, process the check-in results. There we go. And then shuffle the bracket as I should, and then start the tournament. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. We got there. We absolutely got there. I see we got Maiden in chat, Human Boy Ice Power. Hello and welcome to all of our players. It's going to be a relatively small tournament today for a pretty big prize. We got 25 Canadian dollars on the line today. So the hope is we should be able to see at least some pretty nice matches. Okay, now we are on the beta. So as soon as the lobbies are up, we can get joining. We are going to have a buy. I did shuffle the bracket. I just happened to luck into the buy there. So yeah, pretty good for us. If I do win today, I will be hosting another tournament very shortly using the same prize pool. Bracket is live. There we go. Nice. Red Wedding Planner, hello. I hope you missed that completely botched intro. Oh boy, that was rough. It was real rough for sure. It's strange. It's strange when repeating the same. Oh, the same cold and aloof stuff. You're talking about yeah, the good old Warhammer 3 news. Yeah, that already seemed to have slowed down, unfortunately, but I'm sure I'll pick up later. Torox will be in Warhammer 3. Oh, Torox the Brass Bull in chat. Nice. Happy to have your rage and rampaging in here. Yes, I will be casting Call Harmon versus Ice Power. The reason is because the moment they finish, I'll be facing off against the winner. So should be good. You're at work with no sounds, so you have no idea what's going on. All right. Well, I can't respond to you, Doctor, but hopefully, yeah, hopefully that all goes okay. All right. Oh, yes, I should post in here. Tournament is live. Let's see. Make sure your lobby has spec slots. All right. All right. So, yeah, pretty small tournament today. I think the players are pretty high caliber. Call Harmon, Ice Power. Let's see, we got the Phoenix King in here. Curio, where Definitely seen them before. I forget. Are they the high elf player that I completely forgot about? Because I may have just forgotten about them again. But we'll see. Any expectations for Cathay multiplayer wise? They're going to be very cheesy, for sure. Oh yeah, yeah, we got Rusty in the tournament too. I may or may not have completely glossed over you. You have said that you are a new player, but the chances are always possible. It is best of threes, and we only have a handful of players here, so yeah, it should be good. Oh, hey, Christopher, what's up? Happy to have you in the YouTube stream for once. Yeah, it's a very small tournament. I am fighting for my own prize. Hopefully, if we do win it, I'll be able to fund another tournament myself, which will be very exciting. So there is some pretty nice incentive there. Let me message Ice Power and call Harmon. Let's see, at Ice Power, call Harmon. Do you have a lobby? Oh. All right. Want to spectate. All right. So cool. Ice Power is getting back to me, so I should be able to watch their match in just a second. Oh, and there we go. Look at that. It just appeared. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and load on in. Which means we'll be able to dive into the first match very, very soon. All right, so it's going to be XMT's Ice Power. Very frequent winner of these tournaments. They've come out on top multiple times. In fact, the majority of times for these tournaments. And the only thing stopping him is may possibly be just me and Call Harmon. Let's see. So from Clan ODM. Call Harmon. That's I think it's 2 A's twice in a row, but the man at the end is only 1 A. Oh, and I forgot the maps. Oh, darn it. Darn it. Oh man, this tournament has I really botched things up a little bit, haven't I? Maps 9. All right, let's go ahead and throw those in real quick. Oh boy, all right, save that. For those of you wondering where I can pull maps so quickly, it is from the Entbot. You can actually just do exclamation mark maps and it will return you a set of maps. If you add a number in front of that, like maps space 9, it will give you 9 maps. Also very useful. Okay, maps are set. Sorry for the delay. All right, there we go. Nice. Whew. Oh my gosh. So many things to manage for these tournaments. Set. First is, the first map is Schwarzhaven. All right. First is Schwartz. All right. There we go. I'll update the screen blocker with the maps, and then we can finally get underway with this after all this is done. And there we go. Maps are set. Nice. So, between Ice Power and Call Harmon, if you have any predictions in chat, let me know. I will set up a poll just to give me a few more things to manage, because why not? And then I can catch up with some comments. Swapping to the beta, though, will take... Yes, swapping to the beta will take a little bit of time. But it's going to be a fairly short tournament today, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue, I think. And Rusty, you're pretty far up in the tournament already, so not too much to worry about there. You have some time to change. As for the poll, who will win? Ice or Call? There we go. The poll is up. Feel free to vote now. And yeah, I personally, I'm not sure who will win. I think last time Ice Power did win though, so he would be the expected person to come out ahead this time around. But yeah, yeah, I was going to go over Cathay multiplayer wise. They're definitely going to be pretty. I think they're going to be a little bit cheesy with their flying units. They have command of the air and ranged flying units, something that's really rare for many factions. And yeah, that'll basically do it. That's the perfect setup for some sick air cheese. They will have to contend against the forces of Tzinch, who and actually many factions in Warhammer 3 look like they will have some pretty nice air superiority. So we'll see how that actually plays out. Cathay, I really like their powder too. That should be pretty fun. So honestly, I think they'll overall be a very enjoyable faction. As for how meta they will be, I think these types of mixed factions, they'll probably be around the same level as the Empire. Very likely, I would say. They seem to be rather slow slash fragile. It looks like they have sort of the equivalent of Pegasus Knights at a glance. So maybe a bit fragile, but if their lords can take to the skies, that would be absolutely huge. But all right, it looks like it's going to be Chaos against the Lizardmen. Very, very nice matchup. This one can really go either way. It's going to rely pretty heavily on the single entity play, for sure. All right, cool. Poll is done. We got 61% votes on Call Harmon. Now that's pretty interesting. We'll see if Call Harmon can live up to the hype. Both of these players, by the way, have qualified for the ECL. So they're definitely among the top tier of all players. Looks like Ice Power indeed going for Chaos. Now, yeah, there is a little bit of potential for Kite here. Most of the time, though, it is a very front-on fight between the players. But I think for sure Lizardmen have quite a bit of options there. Chameleon Skinks will do much better than Stalkers overall, since there aren't too many large entities for them to hit, unless they do manage to find some Horsemen. And Chaos will naturally have the slightly stronger fighting force, as is the general idea with them if they decide to take a front-on engagement. Big monsters like Kolek can be rather dangerous here. One of the matchups where you actually do see him fairly often. So it should be good. Ice Power actually changing his mind a bit, looking like he might actually go for Skaven, which would be a little bit of a stronger counter to the Lizardmen. People voting for Call Harmon, they forget that Ice is on home turf. Yes, indeed. He is extremely familiar with these tournaments and its format, although it does mimic the formats of many other tournaments. He's definitely going to be pretty well practiced when it comes to general best of threes, and he did face Call Harmon earlier too. And it looks like he does switch to the Skaven. Call Harmon, he's fine with it. Apparently coming on in with a plan, but we'll see. Like I said, this is naturally a rough matchup for the Lizardmen, but Call Harmon with the preset build. When Ice Power switches to Skaven, it looks like Call Harmon is definitely not going to be caught off guard as we load in to the game. Is my okay, no, that is centered. Okay, I thought my scores were off-centered for a bit. Freaked me out, but here we go. The stream actually getting started fairly quickly today. It only took us 20 minutes before I could fix all of the problems, which is a win on my part. And as we load on in, we can take a quick look at what the players have brought for us today. Zachary, hoping for some Skaven Kite, a pretty rare style of play for Skaven, but definitely one that they will use every now and then. Could be a possibility. I'm not sure how often Ice Power is prone to kiting, though. What do you expect for the Warriors of Chaos in Warhammer 3? Most definitely they'll be getting a little bit of a look at. I doubt they'll make it far into Warhammer 3 without getting an update of some sort. As for the type of update, I have no idea, but I'm sure it'll be very exciting. Definitely a campaign rework too. They'll probably be fairly meta also, since they're doing really well in the meta currently. Remember to put the webcam in the center? You madman. Well, let's see. Enticity, any PE clan members in the tournament? I'm not sure. Here's the bracket. Doesn't look like it, but since we are loaded in now for the forces of Ice Power, an assassin with his usual melee combat debuffs, a Gracier of Ruin. I roll my R's terribly. I barely pronounce them anyways. Is that a dreaded 13th spell? It is! The 20 Winds of Magic AoE Explosion. Same cost as a Manticore summon, but comes with some fairly immediate damage. A nice gun line of Rattling Guns, Globadiers, very standard, and some Rat Ogres. All units that you see in Vermintide 2, which I have actually started playing recently. It is amazing. I love how faithful it is to this is a huge tangent, by the way, but it's very faithful to the units in Warhammer 2, surprisingly so. But tangents aside, you also got the Council Guard, and that's going to be it. Fairly standard when it comes to Skaven. For the Lizardmen, it looks like it's going to be a bit of an aggressive skink rush by the looks of it. I call it a rush because there's actually not a lot of ranged firepower here. The very characteristic Pterodon play of Call Harmon 2, he very much likes to take his Pterodons and a Feral Stegodon. Amazing anti-infantry tool and great at fighting the single entities of Skaven, especially when it is supported by those Manticore summons. We got Krokgar 2 with the Hand of the Gods, something that Call Harmon has been taking fairly often as of late. Oh, and look at that, a second Feral Stegodon. Now, that's going to be a lot of big monsters to take out for the Skaven. Let's not forget they do have Rattling Guns, but a little bit of a hidden weakness to them. Take a look at the missile damage. Not a lot of it. Just kidding. A good amount is armor-piercing damage. I'm surprised. It doesn't seem like they do that much AP, but nevertheless, these are the armies. Overall, I would say the Skaven frontline is looking a little bit weaker than the Lizardmen, and they're going to have to use their Rat Ogres to really support them here. Without the Rat Ogres, the Lizardmen will definitely be able to run over all these Skaven slaves with their skinks. The Rat Ogres, however, will have to worry about the Javelins for coming in for the Lizardmen, and honestly, it doesn't look like there's a lot of anti-Javelin defense. We'll see if the Greyseer of Ruin manages to take them out with his abilities. All right. Warriors of Chaos have definitely dropped to the bottom since the Beastman update in campaign. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Anthony, for sure. Right now, the addition of Sigvald and his healing, in terms of multiplayer, has really amped up Chaos for sure. Accuracy in the value fire is your favorite form of accuracy. Well, I have no idea what you're talking about, Zachary, but let's see, you're talking about some campaign stuff. All right, I'll abandon that conversation for now as the battle gets underway. The forces moving up against each other with neither really having an extremely long-ranged weapon. Can be pretty common, but I am surprised that Skaven didn't bring any Warp Lightning today. Right off, I say right off the bat all the time. I need to get off the habit of that. But as we head on into the main engagement, we're going to see the Chameleon Stalkers. They'll be moving up. They might use their initial volleys to rout off these Skaven slaves, but that could be a little bit of a waste of ammo. The Rattling Gunners getting their first volley off too, getting a surprisingly small amount of damage on the Stalkers. It looks like the Globadiers do hit them though, and that will be chunking them down, as it's going to be a fairly well-timed push-in by Call Harmon. But Ice Power, countering really well, freezes up one Pterodon rider, focuses down the other, and that means only one Pterodon will be able to sneak into the back line. Oh man, the one that got focused, getting completely shattered too. But will the remaining Pterodon riders be able to dive into things? The Globadiers are getting pushed back here on the right flank, but on the left flank, they're still doing quite well. That actually looking quite strong for the Skaven. And that's the third Pterodon rider now getting completely gunned down and routed. These ones on the left-hand flank, though, it looks like they will be able to get a bit of damage. They shut down the Rattling Guns by going into combat, but the Rat Ogres are already there, ready to support their Skaven kin. Meanwhile, though, the fact that the Globadiers have been pushed back does mean that the Lizardmen are able to begin pushing into the front line. Balance of power is heavily in the favor of Ice Power, though, and some pretty nice wind spells look like they'll be keeping his front line in fairly decent shape. The Gracier is on the run, though. He's trying to keep away from a Manticore. We'll see if he actually goes down. And the Stegodons actually not getting too much value. This one getting completely pinned down by the Rat Ogres and rampaging into the Council Guard. Not going to be very happy about that. Already down to half HP. The other Stegodon looks like he'll be trying to support, routing off a few units of Skaven slaves. But the guns, 2 of them managed to get back online and operational. And look at that, they completely nuked down this Stegodon. He's going to be routing off the battlefield, but there is still one left, which means that the Lizardmen do still have some pretty good chances to put some pressure on. Javelins now catching out these Rat Ogres in the back of the Skaven formation, while the Pterodons get finally taken off of the battlefield by these Rattling Gunners. Some pretty nice execution there by Ice Power. There's only 1 unit left of Pterodons in the very far distance, but the fact that these weapon teams have been able to stay alive is definitely going to be a pretty bad omen for the Lizardmen. Their infantry is still trading pretty well though, but is it going to be strong enough to begin catching out these weapon teams? Even though the balance of power is in the favor of Skaven, if these weapon teams do go down, it will very, very quickly switch to the favor of the Lizardmen, or at least balance out. Meanwhile, Javelins, they use up the rest of their ammunition on the Rat Ogres, but the Ogres are still fairly high on HP, and if they're able to stay on the battlefield, it seems like they will be able to clear out those skinks. The Rattling Guns do get chased down a little bit, though. The Lord, also in a pretty bad place, takes a pretty nice Hand of the Gods, getting in some decent damage here. But unless the Stegodon manages to take him out, he will be able to continue hanging around and causing some issues. His leadership is really high, and a very unfortunate rampage on that Stegodon means it will not be able to continue chasing. Some Globadiers taking out these Skinks very efficiently. It looks like those guys will be routed off. And taking a look at the Lizardmen front line, it's having a pretty rough time now. All of the Lizardmen forces are quite tattered and spread out across the battlefield. I could almost say the same for the Skaven, but they do have some pockets of strength. The Rat Ogres over here, taking out the rest of these Skink cohort. We got the Council Guard here, very high on HP, will be extremely difficult to take out. And the Rattling Gunners are continuing to stabilize with a few Rat Ogres to support too. I think all of this should be pretty good unless the mighty Krokgar manages to pull things back together. He is at very high HP, and if he doesn't get taken out by the assassin, he'll be able to put in a lot of damage, but the Rat Ogres do engage on top of him. Krokgar will be taking a good amount of damage, but perhaps it's not over just yet. Balance of power edged in the favor of the Lizardmen for a second. Goes back towards the Skaven though as soon as Krokgar gets surrounded, and the Rattling Guns on top of all this are going to be pinning him down from the distance. Some Pterodon riders rushing into support, but look at that, another volley comes in at Krokgar. He eats the entire full brunt of it, taking out about a third or a quarter of his HP there. And although these Rattling Guns do get shut down, Krokgar is looking to be a lot less of a threat as we head on into the late game. The Gracier too, barely clinging on to life as the Rat Ogres come into support to make sure that he doesn't get caught out. And look at that, the Stegodon now about to rout. Krokgar has left the battlefield, and now the Skaven have taken a decisive lead. Almost a comeback on the front of Call Harmon there, but that was sadly not enough. Taking a look at some values here, this is why the Skaven are extremely scary. The Globadier is doing amazingly, the Rattling Guns doing their job, paying for themselves, but more importantly, taking out key targets like these Flyers, the Stegodons, and Krokgar. The Gracier, although nearly dead, did manage to come out on top. That means that the Lizardmen, will be taking the first win of today. Oh my gosh. So that's going to be the first win for Ice Power. We may face up against them in the best of 3, which should be quite exciting for sure. Were the Rattling Guns actually as powerful as they look this game? Yes, for sure. They have a lot of supporting elements that do make them a lot more effective than their base damage value. Overall, it's mostly the fact that they can snipe out key targets, though. And by killing off those Stegodons and Pterodons, they really did their job. Dactor saying Call Harmon, too predictable. Oh my gosh, absolutely brutal. That was a very standard Lizardman build, I would say. Just your usual rush with some monsters and some pterodons, and Ice Power was definitely very ready for that. Overall, a pretty tough matchup for the Lizardmen, though. They do have to, even with a well-timed attack, you can just run into some very, very bad matchups there. And as we saw, it can get quite rough. Now, that was Call Harmon's first pick, Lizardmen. One of his favorite factions, actually already taken off the battlefield. And now we must ask, what is Ice Power going to use for his first pick? He has a great deal of options, so we will have to see what he decides to actually go for here. And it looks like it's going to be Dark Elves. All right, very interesting, banning the Bretonians and the Greenskins. Pretty good choice coming in from Ice Power, as both matchups can be pretty rough, but it does leave the Wood Elves open. Wood Elves, of course, being a hard counter to the Dark Elves, and we'll have to see if Ice Power actually gets punished here for it. Call Harmon is familiar with the Dark Elves, so we'll see if that is actually what he decides to go for. Doom saying, hey there, Ent, chat, how are we all? Well, I'm personally doing quite well. The tournament had a little bit of a hiccup at the start, which is always unfortunate, and I think Turin is also streaming, which can sometimes be a plus for me, can sometimes be a minus for sure. But otherwise, I think overall things are going quite well. We have a pretty nice stream today, some really fun matches going on. Our players are looking quite nice. I'm especially excited to see how this best of 3 between Ice Power and Call Harmon ends. So we'll have to see. Call Harmon actually going for the High Elves here. A bit of a strange pick. This matchup is fairly even for the two factions, so we'll see how this actually plays out. Don't you think that the Khorne roster seems rather limited? Ask CY Bevep. You see little counters to skirmish styles of play. Indeed, that is going to be a little bit of a problem. Khorne doesn't have a lot of cheap cavalry, but he does have a Hell Cannon with fairly decent HP and a really fast missile. And I think that should be able to stop him from being cheesed too hard. But any faction that can snipe that out will definitely have a heyday versus Khorne. He also has a very fast flying force in the Furies in the air, and we haven't actually seen gameplay of them yet. So there's a good chance that they'll be able to really shut down any mobility as long as they are fast enough. Your two favorite factions? Oh, nice. We got an elf fan here. Should be pretty fun. This matchup actually isn't something that you see very often, and I think both players Call Harmon might be a little bit more prepared for it. And for Ice Power, I'd be surprised if he has a lot of preset builds here. This one is fairly uncommon. Yeah, they do have mobile cannons. So overall, Khorne should be in a decent spot. His infantry do seem fairly elite though, which is expected for him. So I think that should be pretty fun, but if you have too much armored elite infantry, you can still run into a few issues. Just take a look at the dwarves, who do run into a lot of hard counters for sure. Strange when high elves are fighting dark elves. It's not a common matchup for sure. You rarely counter both factions have much worse counter picks that can go on. So it's not exactly something that you want to be seeing too often. Now, Ice Power, he does go for, I can't say what he's going for because the game hasn't started yet. So almost a little bit of a problem there, but I did manage to avoid it. You think going by the tabletop, Nurgle is going to be the strongest? I heard Nurgle was rather strong. I think also based on what we've seen from Warhammer, the vampire counts, despite having no range units, are actually a really strong faction in the game right now. And I think Nurgle will be able to channel a similar type of playstyle. Yeah, slow and expensive infantry. Probably one of the weakest things to have if that is the core of your faction. Usually expensive infantry too. They generally want to be pretty fast because they want to fight. They want to get into combat before they get shut down as quickly as possible. Either that or they are extremely tanky. And that's not something you see too often except for maybe the Black Guard of Nagrand. Torox is the most excited for Tzeentch. Are you looking to lose your boons from Khorne? I don't think it was Khorne, right? Very likely Khorne that they gave boons to Torox, but I guess there was some Tzeentch stuff in the lore, right? I've completely glossed over it, so surely someone in chat will know more than I. But perhaps Tzeentch has swayed the mind of Torox. I think you might be onto something here. The Bloodletters, yeah. I'm wondering how fast Bloodletters will be. Yeah, Khorne's cavalry won't be too fast. I don't think so. They will be rather elite, but if they don't have healing, that means that they can't get nearly as much value as other factions. Unless they have some really good stats. Probably similar to Boroboys. Oh yeah, they are pretty good. And Khorne's cavalry will be extremely armored too, so against some factions it will probably be okay. Armor piercing though has become a more and more common thing in the Warhammer sort of Total War franchise, so I'm sort of worried about Khorne's cavalry actually. Like, you know, even Centaur great weapons would probably trade decently into them. Yeah, they won't be cheap either, so they'll be overrun a bit. Honestly, I'm a little bit worried about Khorne. Yeah, he might have a very rough time. But as we load on into the game, for the forces of ice power, what are we seeing? Malekith on a cold one. You don't take him on his chariot because Soul Stealers does not work there. There's sort of a little bit of a bug still in the game. There are 2 Manticores, some Scourge Runner chariots, very standard against the High Elves, Dread Spears, and we got some Dark Riders into the horizon with a single unit of Cold One Knights. Not the most common thing for ice power, but fairly good in this matchup, as they can trade well into the mid-tier and low-tier High Elf cavalry. And for that cavalry, some Illyrian Reavers along the flanks with some Silver Helms that will be taking the back line. Looks like 2 Silver Helms and 1 Dragon Prince. Very elite cavalry for the High Elves with a front line of Rangers. Now the Rangers, they're going to be really good at cutting down the Dread Spears for sure. But whether or not they'll be able to survive some chariot charges has yet to be seen. A Princess in the Air for really nice sniping potential, specifically for said Scourge Runner chariots, and a Mage of High Magic without any missile spells, just healing and anti-air. Now the anti-air will be extremely good against the Manticores, but definitely not designed to take out chariots for sure. That onus will go entirely on the Princess, and I'm wondering if she'll have enough firepower to handle that situation. Otherwise, that's basically it for both armies. I guess we'll check the abilities on Malekith real quick. Yep, standard Soul Stealer. Ice Power will be able to get 3 or 4 casts of that by the end of the game. And it is a very strong spell to make sure Malekith can heal cap. Lazy Lad saying, hello Enticity. May I ask where you put your Lizardmen and Dark Elves in the sort of tier list for multiplayer? So, Lizardmen and Dark Elves, they're both... Lizardmen is definitely a higher tier than Dark Elves. Dark Elves is generally low tier compared to other factions, but that doesn't mean they're unplayable for sure. Anyways, still though, we have a game to cast right off the bat. Karl Harman's force is moving on forwards, getting his archers into position. His infantry will be taking a few shots from those Scourge Runners, but he doesn't actually lose models. They specifically do more damage to large units, and unless they're shooting at cavalry, they generally don't pay for themselves too much. I have seen Ice Power target infantry very often though, so it seems like a strategy that he feels like is definitely worth going for rather than saving the ammunition. Malekith too looks like he'll be getting in on top of the infantry fight. With his support, the Dark Elf front line should be able to win the front line, and the chariots plowing in through too are going to be diving in on the archers. But the cavalry, quite numerous for Carl Harmon, will be swarming in along the flanks. These guys, the Silver Helms, tanking the initial charge so that the Dragon Princes can slam into these Dark Riders. Possibly cold ones too, yes indeed. Getting in a decent amount of damage. It looks like they will be able to rout one of the units off. Another unit of Reavers will be charging into the back, and this fight should go quite well for Carl Harmon. Meanwhile, on the right flank of the Dark Elves, the Illyrian Reavers are charging some spears. They're trying to tip the fight in the favor of the Rangers, but the center line has gone pretty bad as the Dark Elf forces begin spilling through. This means that the range units that Carl Harmon would want to protect are going to be having to retreat now, and they will actually be getting run down by a few of the Dark Riders. A huge swing for the Dark Elves too. The Murderous Prowess does indeed actually trigger, and this is going to be really bad, especially when it comes to this right flank. Meanwhile, on the left one, despite all odds, these the Dragon Princes not trading especially well into the Dark Riders, perhaps their charge not acting as effectively as Carl Harmon would have hoped. And the balance of power does go in the favor of the Dark Elves. They have taken a pretty significant lead now, and they are pushing the High Elves into the back. There is still the Princess up in the air, though, at very high HP. She'll be looking for targets to pick off, but even if she does kill off all the chariots, I don't know if she'll have enough power to actually finish off the game. A shot does come in towards the Scourge Runners, doesn't do that much damage, though, and Carl Harmon is going to have his work cut out for him for his cavalry. A Soul Stealer does drop too, and that does rout off this pocket of Silver Helms and Reavers. And Malekith is still at extremely high HP. The Manticores didn't get caught in any brutal tempests either. And oh, right as the tempest drops, the Manticore lands, and that negates all the damage that it will be taking. Really nice reactionary play from Ice Power. We'll be able to keep that Manticore nice and safe as the players head on into the late game. Carl Harmon going for a bit of a big play here. Looks like he will be trying to snipe out Malekith using the Princess and these, I think these are Dragon Princes. Indeed, they are anti-large, and they will be chunking down the Manticore extremely quickly. Malekith getting very low too. And if Carl Harmon is able to take out Malekith, this will actually be a pretty big swing play for him. Ice Power, though, is coming in to assist. A Gaze of Malice will be dropping on those Dragon Princes. Actually doesn't do that much damage to their very high armor. And perhaps this is the lucky break Carl Harmon has been looking for. The back of the battlefield is just filled with routing High Elf units, and he'll just be trying to make as big of a play as possible, using his Lord, cycle charging as much as he can. Soul Stealer drops on the Dragon Princes too. It looks like it will be taking out a good few models, each tick taking out about one Dragon Prince by the looks of it. But they do manage to get in a good charge on the Feral Manticore, and it looks like they will be able to take out actually both Manticores in this battle. Malekith, though, is still at extremely high HP, and although the caster is still alive for Carl Harmon, it looks like it will be still a bit of an uphill battle due to all the infantry. Malekith, too, falling into the safer position of his spears. That means that all sniping potential is going to be going out the window, at least in the short term. The Princess, with her high ammunition, will still be able to take pot shots at Malekith, and we'll see if Carl Harmon is able to eventually take him out. A nice heal on the Princess too will keep her in the battle for longer, and meanwhile, these Dark Riders, they do get chased off by some Reavers. Ooh, sort of Arrows of Kurnos ability does land. Doesn't get that much damage though, and Malekith looks like he will still be healthy. He likely has another Soul Stealer too, that he will be throwing in the late game. And we'll see if Ice Power does actually manage to get that down. I think it should be pretty likely, and that means Malekith's chances of being sniped out are going to be rather low. Meanwhile, here at the bottom side of the map, some cavalry trying to catch out some spears, but they actually do get punished by a countercharge of the Dark Riders. Scourge Runners look like they are looking to get in on the fight too. They're not amazing against cavalry, but on the charge they do still do some fairly nice impact damage. They'll be helping out here, and although the spears do rout off, 2 more units do move on in, and that means that these Dragon Princes will likely have to disengage. The Princess, too, taking a nice charge on Malekith. Looks like she is trading decently here. And the balance of power has actually gone back in the favor of Carl Harmon, despite all odds. I'm very surprised by that, but I guess all these cavalry engagements have actually come out slightly ahead for Carl Harmon. Malekith, too, taking the constant beating from the Princess means that it is a fairly nice trade, but I'm still a little bit skeptical despite the balance of power. There are a ton of spears here to contend with. A Gaze of Malice does miss, though, hits a single unit of Dread Spear. A little bit unfortunate for that one guy, but not too much damage on either side. A bit of a loss for the side of the Dark Elves, but against cavalry, as we saw, the Gazes don't do that much damage. Very close a game indeed, Doom, as Malekith continues to take pot shots. His heal cap is revealed too, but I'm wondering if that Soul Sealer is going to be picking him up. And as the cavalry does engage, I would very much expect the Soul Sealer to drop here if Malekith does have the Winds of Magic for it. He has dropped quite a few, and we are in the late game, so it could be quite a bit before that actually comes out. The Princess, too, she is running low on ammunition, and if Malekith does get a heal off, he will likely be able to survive the rest of the ammo. He is shielded, though, and it looks like he is taking a bit of refuge in the forest to avoid some of those shots. This will keep him in fairly good health heading on into the late game. It looks like that missile actually missing completely may actually be an avenue for the Dark Elves to avoid any Lord sniping potential. Meanwhile, taking a stock at the rest of the High Elf forces, we do just see 10 Illyrian Reavers and 14 Silver Helms, but really the main threat here, these Dragon Princes at 17 models. If Malekith drops a Soul Stealer on top of them, it will be completely undodgeable, and that will greatly weaken the forces of the High Elves. With just a few Reavers, I don't think they can kill off the spears, and especially with the tankiness of the chariots, that will be pretty rough. Malekith, though, is having a very rough day, though. He is at extremely low HP, probably less than a quarter HP now, as the Princess continues to try and snipe him out, actually going in for a bit of a fake dive-in. Looks like she does actually commit, and it's actually going to be a sniping attempt on Malekith. He gets very close to routing off, and if he routes off before the Soul Stealer drops, that would be huge. But right as he routes off, the Soul Stealer is cast, and it does just barely manage to hit the Dragon Princes, but Malekith is actually running for the hills now. Now, the Dragon Princes will be taking pretty insane damage. They will be losing about half of their HP from that Soul Stealer, going down to 10 models from 17. But that dive-in was absolutely huge. A bit of a late Soul Stealer means that Malekith will be routing early, and I think Carl Harmon, against all odds, might actually be able to come back here. Now, the Dark Elf forces, they are still quite tanky, and all of these units are large, so it will be a bit of a grind before these spears actually kill things. There are a few archers too, but we'll see if the Scourge Runners actually manage to shut them down. The Dragon Princes are large, but the Scourge Runners, perhaps a bait, actually turning around to bog down the Dragon Princes. That means that these spears will actually be able to charge into them and start taking off models. Each model lost will mean that these Dragon Princes won't be able to get a lot of healing, and it looks like they are on the verge of routing, but so are the Scourge Runners, as they do actually break off. Dragon Princes only losing one model, but it will get a lot more rough at the disengage. Malekith, in the meantime, getting chased off by the High Caster, one of the Silver Helms, routing off for apparently no reason at all. And the Dragon Princes, a very elite High Elf unit, just barely staying in the battlefield, but down to 7 models, the chances of them routing off are definitely quite likely indeed. They get a nice charge, but will another model go down? No, it doesn't. It does manage to disengage, and the archers fire in at the spears to allow for the princess to disengage. But the chariots move on in. If they take out these archers, they will not be able to help kill off the spears, and that will be absolutely huge for the Dark Elves. They do just barely cling on. Silver Helms, what a poor elite High Elf unit, routing off before they actually see combat. But Malekith is finally gone. This means that the Scourge Runners are extremely prone to getting routed off here. But the Dragon Princes will have a bit of their work cut out for them. They're going to be actually nearly routing off here despite getting a pretty solid charge as the spears lay into them. Another Dragon Prince model goes down, and the Princess opting not to assist here. The Dragon Princess actually get routed off too. And the balance of power, it's still very much in the favor of the High Elves, but they have a lot of hard targets to actually deal with here. The Princess looks like she will be chasing off the Scourge Runners, though. This is a good call. They are the last source of mass for the Dark Elves, and meanwhile, the Archers are gonna be on the run. There aren't a lot of High Elf units left on the battlefield. In fact, it is just the Archers, and they actually get routed off. This is huge for Ice Power, as it means that cycle charging will no longer be an option for his single entities, and if these archers do not come back, that princess is going to have to sit in a long fight against these spears for basically the rest of the battle. She will be assisted by the princess, or no, not the princess, the high mage, and there could be a possibility of some heals in the late game, but that's basically going to be it. The edge of the map is right here, very precarious for these archers. And that's going to be pretty rough for Ice Power. Now, or it's going to be pretty rough for Carl Harmon, that is. Now, he will be able to chase off the Scourge Runner chariots. A heal drops on the Princess. And nice control here, deciding not to overcommit and land with the Princess, so that she saves on her vigor. And that so that she can properly chase off the Scourge Runners. Oftentimes when you land, you can turn them into some strange directions, which keeps them on the battlefield for longer than you would want. Ice Power, though, continuing to chase off these archers. He is on the verge of army losses, though, and we might actually see that happen as we go in. The archers rout off, but it actually doesn't sway the balance of power. And it seems like army losses is actually going to win out the game. The princess is bugging out because they're in the forest, perhaps. As we jump back over here to the Scourge Runners, they will be able to rout off the battlefield, to see another day of combat. But as it comes, as it is for multiplayer, not exactly too important here. They are finally off the battlefield, though, and it is just going to be these single entities of Carl Harmon against the spears of Ice Power. Overall, I would put my money on the spears of winning it, but the fact that the balance of power is so in the favor of Carl Harmon, a single charge might push those spears off of the fight. Looks like they're going to be standing their ground, possibly a bit of an attacking rule break there, but it won't really matter unless we'll only dive into it if Carl Harmon decides to call it out. They will be regenerating stamina, though, and for the forces of Carl Harmon, it looks like he's going to be opting for swift engagements towards the Dark Elves, actually going for a bit of a sideways, more of a longer route towards them. Possibly just trying to get out of the forest, though, so that this mage of high magic stops getting slowed down. If he routes, the low HP of spears can... yes, Carl Harmon is able to chase the spears if they rout off the battlefield. Now, for Ice Power, he does begin scooting up a little bit. It looks like opting for the walk moving forward, though. But it looks like the stamina won't really be coming into play. You can see here, the vigor of all of these spears is still extremely low, and that is the same for Carl Harmon. So it looks like it's going to be a low vigor fight as we head on into the late game here. And how will this actually play out? There are a few options for Carl Harmon to take here. The princess can get some nasty charges into the backs of the Dread Spears, and the princess could potentially pin them down so that they don't get their initial charge bonus. But instead, Carl Harmon deciding to dive just right on in with that princess. A bit of a scary play here, but with these Dread Spears so low on leadership and the other spears not really able to support them, a charge in the back will likely be able to shatter them off the battlefield. They decide to countercharge the princess. This does boost up their leadership, and that actually looks like it will be keeping them in the battle. Now, they are on the verge of routing off nevertheless, though, as that charge bonus does wear off. They are rather low on HP. And if they do rout off, that will buy another charge of Carl Harmon if he decides to take it. The balance of power, though, heavily swings in the favor of the Dark Elves. And it looks like they will actually be able to come out on top, as the forces of the High Elves actually do rout off. And that will actually B game. Oh my gosh. Absolutely brutal there. A really rough engagement for the princess, landing dead center, completely surrounded by the spears. Did not manage to rout off those dread spears, and that did, unfortunately, lead to a very swift game for a swift end, that is, for Carl Harmon. Malekith, actually, the princess did pretty well at sniping him off, getting in a ton of value there. But by the end of the game, it seems like those spears were a little bit too much, as we predicted so early on. The Scourge Runner chariots doing extremely well for themselves, and both cavalry generally trading quite well. But that's going to be it. Ice Power getting the win. And that means that, that means that he's going to be the opponent that we will be facing. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, here we go. All right. I'll jump into the lobby. Also, by the way, I think standing still for late game would be a rule break most of the time. Heads up. This game, though, all units were still at 0 stamina. Stamina by the end of the battle. All right, there we go. So we went ahead and let Ice Power know, and we can go ahead and join that lobby. All right, so a mighty best of 3 against myself and Ice Power. Let's see if I can find the match. Here we go. We are in. And if they reported the scores, I can go ahead and update the bracket. All right, so that's 2-0 for Ice Power, which means that the tournament is progressing nicely. The Phoenix King moving on up to the the semifinal round, and then we should be good. Oh, that is true. Never mind then. You were fine. All right, yeah, that is true. Carl Harmon was in the forest, so Ice Power didn't have any obligation to attack. So, never mind. Completely good. Ice Power showing a good understanding of the rules. Very nice for the high tier players here. And it is going to be him against me in a best of 3 now. Fighting for either another tournament or Ice Power taking the sweet, sweet tournament prize. It's a T. There we go. And it looks like I am going to be the one picking first. And it's going to be on Storm Demon. All right. Storm Demon, very large, flat map, lots of vanguards, which can be a little bit scary here. Makes me really question if I want to take the dreaded Vampire Coast. Perhaps the Beastmen could be a much more scary option. So we will have to see. Loopy talking about some more rule edge cases. In general, though, it did not really affect the outcome of the battle, since all units were tired, so it didn't really matter. So yeah, but anyways, it's fine. We'll move on. All right, so Vampire Coast, a pretty risky pick on this map. There are a ton of Vanguard positions and a very small deployment zone. Beastmen, a very strong faction for this type of situation, could help me out. And I feel like banning Wood Elves and Dark Elves could be the best option here. Beastmen, ban Wood Elves and Dark Elves. Now, there are a few counters that are still pretty scary, but I feel rather confident here. So here we go. My vast practice going on and figuring out a variety of matchups may be able to help me out here, as it does allow me to adapt based on the map. But we'll have to see. We will have to see what Ice Power decides to go for here. He's surprised about the Beastmen pick. It is because of the map, though. Obviously, expecting some Vampire Coast play, might have actually had something planned for me, but we may never see it, as The mighty beastmen will be coming on in. Torox getting hyped in chat. Oh boy, we will have to see. There are a lot of very strong options here for sure. But Ice Power, so far, not an immediate counter pick. This is a good sign for me. I did manage to take out two very scary factions against the Beastmen, specifically Wood Elves and Dark Elves, because they can kite them. So we'll see how this actually plays out. There are a lot of options. Perhaps Ice Power could go for a sort of more even matchups. You could take the Empire, which can be quite scary. You could even go for Chaos, which would do well for itself also. Perhaps the Greenskins too. Honestly, we'll have to see. But overall, Beastmen have been very top tier in the meta recently. So using them as a first pick is, I would say, probably one of the most meta things you can do currently if you are properly trained in them. So we'll see what he decides to go for. Ice Power. Still, no selection just yet. Will we be able to do this? I think Ice Power likely, probably the scariest opponent here based on previous results, would be the most likely person to take us out. So if we manage to win this would be the major hurdle to actually get past. So he forgot about the Beastman pick. Will he go for the mirror matchup? Also a fairly common thing that you see happen here. And that could actually even the field here for Ice Power, but whether or not he is practiced, we will have to see. Remember when Beastmen were never picked and the only time you'd see them win was a mirror matchup? Oh man. Beastmen, 0 to hero. All thanks to the mighty Tuskor Chariot. Very likely because of that, honestly. Of course, they did get a lot of monsters, which helped them in various matchups, like against the vampire counts. So they don't have a ton to fear nowadays, for sure. You can't forget about Beastmen anymore. Yeah, it's definitely a matchup, a faction that you will very much want to practice against. The main issue here is that the fact that it's an extremely good Vanguard map is gonna be the scariest thing for Ice Power to contend with for sure. As many factions that could do well against Beastmen with some wider builds, for example Empire, well, if they get completely Vanguarded on, that really changes things a lot, for sure. And it looks like it's going to be a Bretonian pick. Is this what it will be? Bretonia, very strong against Beastmen, nice. And yeah, we will have to see how this plays out. Now, I personally enjoyed taking Bretonia as a counter to Beastmen, but whether or not it is a very even matchup has yet to be seen. Actually relatively unexplored in the current meta, I would say. This is the patch for Bretonia though, as they are well, yeah, Bretonia is just generally in a pretty nice state given that cavalry has been changed, but we will see if they are able to if they're still able to pull it out despite the build. Oh, someone talking about Enticity Hound play? You know me too well, good sir. You know me too well. Wonder if I'll bring the king? Which king? There are many kings for the Beastmen. Let's see here. But I think I have a pretty fun build coming on up for you guys. This should work out rather well, I think. Now, Ice Power can still come in with some pretty scary options against me. How would I nerf the Fae? Ooh, someone already perhaps predicting some Fae Enchantress shenanigans from the Bretonians here. But overall, I think the Fae Enchantress isn't too scary. There's a few things that make the Fae Enchantress pretty good, but overall, you know, maybe just lower her melee defense and she's more or less in a good place. It's more the paladin support that really gets her in a good position. And overall, I think nerfing paladins is the best way to nerf the Fey Enchantress, because then they won't have nearly as strong single entity power. It would very much so switch them into taking Lewin for sure. It's a total of one person playing Batonia at the moment. Hey, well, you know, on the beta patch, I feel like Batonia has to be more common. It can't be that uncommon, right? But all right, let's see. So far, I'm quite liking this build. Definitely feels rather strong. Ooh, but it does need a little bit of rounding out. Ugh. All right, let's see. Let's see here. Yeah, the single entity fight is definitely going to be pretty contested for sure. Not sure how I feel about that. The Batonian Air Force actually could be a little bit scary here. I'm not sure how well they trade into Beastmen overall, but most of the time you don't see the dreaded Bretonian Air Force. They are rather squishy too, so things like Trader Kin can be just absolutely devastating against them. Yeah, Torox actually does do a lot versus the Fey Enchantress. He will just absolutely wreck face, even against two paladins too. But he does need his buff for that to work out well. All right, KK. Ice power given the BRB. Fey and Lewin are 50-50, says Legion. You do see both pretty often, which is pretty nice. But I think more people are definitely a lot more peeved about the Fey Enchantress overall. Yeah, the Royal Pegasus Air Force. But yeah, I think I have a pretty good build here. I would say my overall confidence, pretty nice, pretty nice. You wonder if Ice Power watched Terran bring Lewin for Torox? We'll have to see. We'll have to see. It could be a pretty good choice. Lewin has the advantage of taking really easy engagements against Torox. But overall, Lewin is extremely expensive. Though if he can catch Torox, that could actually work. It's just something I haven't really experimented yet. Anyways, as soon as Ice Power comes back, we should be able to get into the battle and see how things go. If Cavalry becomes meta, people will switch to Lewin over Fey again. Ooh, interesting take. Well, let's see. Lewin does help assist Cavalry quite a bit, especially with his many debuffs, but the Fey Enchantress can also be really integral too for Cavalry builds. What she brings with the Mortis engine is a lot of anti-infantry to deal with elites, but overall, I haven't played a ton of Bretonia recently, so all of the speculation is more or less in the air on my part. Yeah, Sword of Corone makes Cavalry trade up more for sure, for sure. It will take a while though. Fey Enchantress is still an extremely strong lord, and I think overall I'd be happy if we continue to see a 50-50 split of both heroes. We'll have to see. The Cavalry update has hit, and the majority of tournament organizers are using it. So, it's pretty good. Mortis Engine is almost always useful, indeed. She is very tanky in melee. Extremely hard to take out, but overall, Lewin brings a lot to the table that the Fey Enchantress doesn't. Yeah, we will have to see. The Cavalry update or Cavalry patch didn't especially buff up any of the Cavalry patch. It didn't really buff up the Cavalry that much. It more or less just nerfed a lot of their counters due to a few too many hits going in from Great Weapon Infantry. So it's not like Cavalry are extremely devastating now. Let's see, some buffs for Alberic and Rapunzel would be nice. That would be amazing, but that will always be a bit hard to actually balance. The reason for it is because those guys, they don't they sort of share the same job as Lewin. So overall, you don't really see you don't really see them getting used too often. Like if they were better than Lewin, then you wouldn't really see Lewin anymore. So I'm not actually sure what the best way to do that is. Most lords in the game have to bring some sort of tool to actually make them more effective. But anyways, here we go. Here's my build. It's going to be a Vanguard build. Should be pretty fun. The deployment zone is still rather large for ice power. But with this build, I think I should be able to get a pretty nasty surround. We got our Tuskor Chariot team here that will be taking to the front, trying to do their best to actually distract the cavalry as best as they can by sort of just plowing through the infantry. Kazrak will be going in with his cavalry to give them some needed support. And I even got some Chaos Warhounds. Now, these guys are going to be very important here. And the reason I take them is because they can pressure any archers that move away from the main cavalry force. That should, oh geez, voice crack. That should work out rather well for my hounds, as it is a very cost-efficient thing to use a cheap unit to distract the much more expensive Bretonnian cavalry. My front line is going to be a ton of spears. They'll be mostly taking to the front, but to make sure that the Bretonnians have a little bit more to actually worry about, I can take all my spears and sort of go for a little bit more of a surround on this position. For my Centaur throwing axes, they'll have a few places that they might want to bounce around to. So I think putting them on this far side, actually, you know what? Let's put them a little bit more at the front as a means of support. This should make sure that they can assist wherever they are needed. So good luck, have fun. To ice power, let's go ahead and start the game and see how it goes. So right off the bat, we are seeing the Bretonnians. They are positioned in sort of a forward-facing position, but it actually is a majority cavalry force. That's going to be pretty interesting here. There's questing knights all around. And right off the bat, I'm going to be moving in with my Centaur throwing axes, oh geez, to try and pressure the Bretonnian flank. Now, these knights of the round, they will be getting in a fairly nice charge against me, but what I'm mostly looking for here is a solid AoE on the forces of Bretonnia. If I can get that down, that will be able to kill most of their cavalry, I think. And with some disengages of my own cavalry, they should be able to fare rather well with some nasty cycle charges. My caster too, he's taking a little bit of a beating, but I think he will be able to survive here. Some nice, mostly skirmisher play from ice power means that I don't have any archers that I can actually jump onto, and that makes things a little bit scarier for sure. Meanwhile, Kazrak giving an absolute beating to these paladins here. They will definitely be going down. I've won the cavalry engagement. The Centaur throwing axes really are putting a beating on the Bretonnian forces. Look at that, Kazrak, just an absolute beast, completely annihilating one of the paladins, a major threat already going down, and it's going to be very important that I actually chase him off the battlefield. The chariots will be bothering the yeomen, as the yeomen are not effective against them in the slightest. And with my cavalry now on the flanks of the Bretonnians, I can get a pretty nice charge in and hopefully take them out. Meanwhile, Kazrak over here, extremely high HP. He's completely decimated the Fey Enchantress. Another Traitor Kin will be dropping in just a second, but I might hold it for this unit of cavalry to get engaged first. And there we go. They do dive on in, followed by a nice Traitor Kin on top of everything. Kazrak completely annihilating the Fey Enchantress now. He does get charged in on by one of the paladins and will take a bit of damage, but overall this fight is definitely in my favor. All the Centaur great weapons trading absolutely amazingly against these Bretonnian cavalry units will be my main saving grace here. Overall though, I definitely want Kazrak to be getting solid charges in on the paladins, as that will assist them in that fight. He, in a sustained fight, I think the Paladin does actually come out on top, so I have to be a little bit careful here. Let's go ahead and use my big buff on Kazrak to make sure I actually finish him off, and that means that the single entity advantage will definitely go in my favor. And there we go, the Paladin is now gone, and Ice Power does tap on out. A very, very decisive game, I think. Mostly because Kazrak was an absolute beast. What a mad lad. Look at this guy, 2,000 value in about a minute gameplay. Just annihilated the entire single entity squad by himself with maybe only a little bit of support. The great weapons, absolutely amazing. And even though the dogs did sort of die, they did really nice in keeping the cavalry back since they were defending the yeomen. I really like the chariots too, since they act as another cavalry distraction. And that means that my great weapons just overwhelmed in the frontline fight. So there we go. That's a quick number 1 win. Will we be able to take the number 2 win? Would be pretty funny if I won my own tournament. So there we go. Didn't realize Centaur's wreck Bretonian cavalry so hard. Yeah, this is something that Razel had actually taught me earlier. It's that Centaur great weapons are insane. They really do wreck face. This was a build that I just sort of threw together, but it's actually pretty good. I would recommend stealing it if you're at all interested in the matchup. But nice, that means we'll be moving on to Valley of Thieves next. We'll see who's able to win that. Kazrak, great beastman tactician. Torox is better though, undoubtedly. I only took Kazrak because he could show up to the fight a bit faster. Unfortunately, Torox, not as fast as his chariot brethren. Yes, Kazrak was indeed on the chariot. Man, that was a brutal game though. Man, I love the Centaur great weapons though. I used to really count them out. I always thought that they were sort of bad for their value, but they trade amazingly against armored cavalry. Just amazingly. 90 speed armor piercing cavalry with perfect vigor. Yeah, who knew? Who knew, Loopy? But you know, Beastmen, a lot of people said Beastmen were pretty bad before, and these guys haven't exactly been changed. You always use great weapons versus Empire with Kazrak. Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's see. Sorry, I just have to do some adminning. All right, there we go. That's more or less done. And yeah, now we just wait for the next map to be picked. And then we get the counter pick. We even have Vampire Coast as a counter pick, which is actually a huge advantage on my part. Let's see. Yeah, a few of them played with them before. Yeah. Razel really is the one that introduced me to this type of Beastman playstyle of just insane cavalry advantages and more or less ignoring your infantry, which has done absolute wonders for my Beastman play for sure. Plus the mixing in of Tuskor chariots, just beautiful. Tesla always did well on Beastman. I don't think I've ever seen Tesla play that much before. Turn 3. Faction destroyed. Beastmen. Classic stuff. I know, right? Man, if only they could get a big revamp on the campaign side of things, that'd be great. I really wish that they would, but you know, it's a difficult task. As someone who has attempted to write AI before, it's insanely hard. So we might just have to hope that we get some good head-to-head stuff. Yeah, was Tesla playing before I joined in? I never saw them. But apparently they were a really good Beastman player. I know Flying Taco, with his just really strong rushes, would play Beastmen before. That's sort of... Flying Taco is like the first player I really heard of playing a lot of Beastmen when I first joined the tournament scene. AI is easy, it's difficult to optimize it. Okay, well, yeah, there you go, Legion. That's like saying cars are easy to make, it's just difficult to make it drive fast. It's a very important thing for AI. Yeah. Oh, Flying Taco taught Tesla. Wow, who would have guessed? Small world, I guess. Ooh, but cool. Ice Power deciding on what his first pick is going to be. Surely he's going to have to ban Coast, and there's only a few matchups where he could get away with not banning Coast. Probably just the High Elves, the Wood Elves, I guess. Not too many options. It looks like he does go for the Dark Elves, and he's going to be banning Coast and Bretonia. Not a bad choice at all. This is asking for a Wood Elf pick, so I will take it. Let's go ahead and run the Wood Elves, the classic hard counter to the Dark Elves. We'll see if they're able to win it. Ice Power already ready, of course. When you don't ban a rough matchup, it means that you have something in your back pocket that will be able to do well. So let's go ahead and see if we can win it out. All right, so I need to go ahead and set up my build. Let's see here. I have a pretty nice idea of what I want to be going for. We'll see how well it actually works. This is a little bit of a test. This is a matchup that I haven't played terribly often overall. But we'll have to see. All right. Now the map, it's going to be a very large and flat map. There's a bit of a potential for some kite action that could go on there. Could be a little bit scary for sure. Let's see, and overall, how do I feel about this build? I think this works out quite well. Meanwhile, Grimgor rolls with 60 settlements. Grimgor is a beast. As soon as he takes out the dwarves, the campaign is over. Unless you have a really well-established empire. Yeah, Grimgor, oh my gosh. Absolute beast. Now, I guess I'll take this ability. I guess. I'm not sure exactly how I want to handle the spell casting situation here. But this feels like a pretty decent loadout. Let's go ahead and load into the game and see how we do. Now, there are many other counters to Dark Elves, but I very much want to test out my Wood Elf play against one of the top Dark Elf players in the game right now, Ice Power. And here we go. As we load on in, we're going to see it's a very heavy infantry style of build. I got my Glade Guard with armor piercing. I have a million Dryads to hopefully win me the frontline fight, and then some spears to defend my flanks. Very simple build here. Generally it can be unexpected for Wood Elves to bring this. They will sometimes take it though, so I don't think Ice Power will be completely caught off guard by this, but we'll have to see. Let's go ahead and spread these guys a little bit thinner so that I don't get hit by any brutal burning heads. And we'll also spread out the Wild Riders and Glade Guard. These guys will be supporting the frontline fight as best as they can. If there are chariots though, I will have to pull back with a few of these guys to make sure that my cavalry isn't getting sniped out. The armies are pretty close to even, so it should be a pretty fun game. Both of us have fairly large infantry forces here, and a lot of this could just come down to my cavalry. I'm a little bit worried about how my cavalry will trade. Their main sources of extra strength, their main support is going to be my Glade Guard, and if Ice Power has just a ton of cavalry, things could go very south for me. But there we go, he gives a good luck, have fun. Let's go ahead and begin the battle and take a look at his army. We're seeing no Scourge Runners. Now that is really good for me right off the bat. There is a Feral Manticore in the sky and a Malekith on foot, which means that he's not going to be extremely mobile here. In fact, I might even be able to get some nice kite sort of situations going on. And what I can do, I can pull to the far left to try and get some free shots in on these bleak swords. My cavalry can actually move up a tiny bit too, and sort of feign some cycle charges that are possible, while I more or less just avoid Ice Power's strong force on the flank. My cavalry here will be pulling back so that they can more easily get cycle charges, and my spears will be getting into position to more or less defend on that side. Let's go ahead and continue pushing forwards just a tiny bit. Get some of these Glade Guard to fire away at the cavalry. And then turn a few more, since it seems like Ice Power is creeping up. I definitely don't want to get overwhelmed on the cavalry front. And making sure that I have spears here to support, well, that's going to be very important. There's Assassin too, which means that I do not want to take a head-on engagement. And I'm actually going to be pulling in a lot more cavalry to support here. Now, these Cold One Knights, they're going to be a tiny bit scary against my Dryads, getting in a pretty nasty charge on them. But overall, not getting in too much damage. That's definitely good for me. And so begins the first charge of the Dark Riders. Let's go ahead and get my spears to tank the initial charge. Get my cavalry in here to start supporting. And although I did get some of my guys charged by these Dark Riders, I should be able to punish them with my Wild Riders. I want to chase off the Dark Riders too, lest they get too much damage in, and hopefully get some pretty nice charges with my Dryads too, as they do have a fairly important charge bonus. Drycha actually getting a little bit beat up here by the Manticore. We'll have to disengage. I will use a bit of a summon to help and get her out of that sticky situation for sure. And with a fairly nice cavalry advantage, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable now, especially with Drycha now escaping. Meanwhile, the front line looks like it is going in my favor. The Manticore is getting pretty beat up, and I'm successfully chasing off these Dark Riders. They shouldn't be too much of a problem as we head later into the game. My archers will want to stay away from the assassin though, and it's going to be mostly keep away at this point in the battle. Some more Dark Riders are coming on in, and I definitely want to be dealing with them as Drycha continues to try and escape. I do have another pendulum too, and I will try to hit up these Dread Spears. Drycha looks like she might actually go down to the assassins though, so I have to be very careful. And what I'm actually going to do now is start pressuring them with my archers. If they have to dodge, that means that they can't do much in terms of chasing, and hopefully that manages to shut them down. Meanwhile, my Dryads are doing decently on the front line. They're not dominating by any means, and Drycha herself is still taking quite a bit of damage. I'll have to keep a close eye on the front line to make sure that nothing goes too terribly there. Meanwhile, also trying to keep Drycha as safe as I can. I'm pulling in all of my archers now to really punish these assassins who have, it seems, overextended just a tiny bit. They should be going down pretty handily. As my archers get closer, they won't have an easy time dodging. And taking a look at my cavalry, I have lost most of my Wild Riders, and that's going to be pretty rough. We'll see if I can actually sort of salvage that situation. But my main strength here, I think, is going to be my Glade Guard. As they are extremely healthy now, they should be able to support the front line. Well, they won't really be able to support the front line, but I will be able to successfully kite out the forces of the Dark Elves, I think. And that should be enough to hopefully win the game. This assassin, though, still pretty scary, and I definitely want to be chasing them down. Let's continue to retreat with the Glade Guard. They are quite fast, and this will allow them to disengage and shoot at the cavalry at the same time. They won't easily be able to do much, especially not surrounding Drycha, and I should be able to find a fairly safe position. Meanwhile, my small contingent of cavalry will be able to start doing cleanup, and the hope is that that'll be able to give me a pretty good advantage. Now, a little bit of a problem. Ice Power. He is getting in some pretty nice dodges with these Dark Riders. They've been able to dodge most of the shots here, and they actually do get a fairly nice engage on a lot of my forces. But I will be able to pretty easily chase them off with some focus fire from the Glade Guard. I still have a Pendulum on Drycha too, but I sort of feel like saving for some more slows actually, instead of spamming out the Pendulums. Meanwhile, Dryads are doing well, and I do still have some Spears, which means that the Manticores shouldn't be too much of an issue. The Dark Riders too, if I can get a slow on them, that would be huge. I can't really catch them though, and I don't want to overcast in case Drycha takes too much of a beating from the overcast damage. I definitely don't want that to happen. The Manticore too, still pretty scary. Ice Power does have a nice lead in this battle right now. So we'll have to see how it actually plays out as ammunition begins to dwindle for these Glade Guard here. I will be able to pick off the rest of the infantry though, but saving ammunition is going to be a little bit important here. The Assassin too, a pretty scary threat. I'll make sure that I'll try to focus him down with the Glade Guard. Some nice dodges from Ice Power though, does manage to dodge most of the shots, and ammunition continues to run pretty low. I have my cavalry though, and I have a bit of an advantage in terms of infantry that I should be able to capitalize on. Malekith though is a little bit of a beast, and I'll have to be a bit careful not to die to him. A nice volley here from the Dark Riders. I'll try to punish them with a volley, counter volley from myself, and continue sort of pushing this way. Most of my forces are scattered, and it is going to come down to my Starfire shafts, and there are rather few volleys that they have left. Let's go ahead and get another volley on these Dark Riders. Ooh, a big Soul Stealer does drop though. Let's see if I can knock down Malekith. Oh, but he gets the Soul Stealer off, and that's gonna be pretty scary. The Starfire shafts do still get in a lot of damage though, and I do punish his Dark Riders pretty hard. They will be leaving the battlefield. And I can go ahead and shoot at this K-Knight Assassin and hopefully get him out of the fight now. It does look like he will be going down. He does drop the Web of Shadows, catches a few targets, but he does get routed off. And that means that it is just Malekith that I really have to be killing. Now some focus fire from my Starfire shaft should be able to get in some pretty nice damage. Looks like Ice Power looking to get some dodges in, but Malekith does not dodge easily. He is rather slow, and oh my gosh, that beating. Actually, that combined fire, taking him down pretty low now. I do still have a few Dryads too. My cavalry a little bit worse for wear, still holding their own fairly well. Malekith taking another big volley from my Starfire shafts, but we have limited ammunition left, so I have to be a little bit careful here. If I can rout him off though, that should be game. Let's go ahead and get nice and close, get a solid volley. Looks like he gets some pretty nice dodges in there though, and he is going to be surviving that initial volley. Now these Starfire shafts, they will be able to still fire in onto him. Ooh, Drycha taking a little bit of a rough engagement. Malekith actually catching her out there, but let's see if I can actually take him out. He is surrounded by spears. His leadership is really low, so I just essentially have to land a single hit here. If he does go down, I should be able to win it, and he does rout, which means that all I have to do now is simply chase him off, and then I should be good to go. There is a Manticore in the air though, and that is going to be probably one of the scarier things that I'll have to deal with. But I do have a lot of archers who will hopefully be able to take it down. We'll have to see. These Dark Riders too are going to be rather threatening. The Manticore actually does land in and get some pretty good damage, but at least I'm able to take out Malekith. As he goes down, it means that it will just be the Manticore against my many spears, and as we know, targets like that, they have a hard time taking out these very, very sturdy spears if they land in the center, especially if they don't have any support. And as the Manticore does land on top of Drycha, she will be throwing down a slow on top of it as soon as she does manage to get up. Come on, Drycha, slow it down. As there we go, I do manage to slow it down. And that means that my spears will be able to get some pretty nice damage as it tries to disengage. It does manage to take back into the sky though. And it looks like it will be trying to go in for another dive in on Drycha, but with the support of my spears, I think I should be just fine. I even have another volley left on my archers, And that is going to be able to more or less finish off anything that comes back, especially those repeater crossbows. If they do come back, well, they'll be able to absolutely lay waste to my forces here. So it's very important that I have enough ammo to take them out. Now I do have another pendulum too, but instead I'm actually going to mist and miasma these spears. That feels like a much more efficient choice here. And then the Starfire shafts, they might just try to shoot at the Manticore a tiny bit. In the meantime, I'll line up my archers to get in range. It seems like the Manticore does dive in onto Drycha again, though. And as these spears sort of get close, I'm going to try and get a nice pendulum on them if Drycha can actually get up. It looks like she doesn't, though, but it doesn't matter, as Ice Power does tap on out. A pretty close game, but thankfully these armor-piercing Starfire shafts really just managed to wreck face. They annihilated all the heroes, and specifically they managed to kill Malekith without running out of ammo. That is not cycle charging Dactyr, as units are free to disengage as long as it's not cycle charging. And there was a unit of spears, and he only engaged again once the spears showed up. Now, as for the Dark Rider crossbows, they got really shut down by my Glade Guard, and that's more or less what I needed to win the game. So GG to Ice Power. Very close second game there, showing that he definitely does put up a fight against the Wood Elves, but thankfully we did manage to come out on top in the end of things. Whew, all right. So that's a very difficult champion to take out. But we do manage to take a 2-0, and that puts us in the finals of our own tournament. Madness. Madness, that's crazy. All right, you like the lore of shadows? Fun lore of magic? Yeah, it's really brutal for sure. Pendulums are absolutely insane. All right, and that means that we're going to be up against GG's. I gotta go cast some games. Yeah. All right. Now, Rusty and the Phoenix King, it looks like they are still playing. Let's go ahead and jump into their lobby and see if they're on their ace match now. It looks like they are playing, so we'll just wait for that. Oh boy, and we'll see how it goes. Oh my gosh, that was a pretty scary game. I think the main thing, my cavalry engagements were a little bit scary. I was actually lacking on cavalry pretty hard. My infantry weren't trading amazingly, but really just being able to kill off those heroes was the main thing. Ice Power really is on point with his dodging too with his heroes, so you got to be pretty careful about that. And had I wasted but a single volley, I might have actually just lost the game entirely there. Alrighty. Now, since we have reached the finals of the tournament, I will say, if I do win the tournament, it means that I will be hosting an extra tournament down the line with the same prize pool, which should be pretty fun. Should be pretty fun. Because really the main limit from me hosting more tournaments is more or less just money. Not that I'm hurting for money, but it does feel bad otherwise. Thankfully, we do have a bunch of tournament sponsors thanks to the Patreon. So we are actually able to host like 4 or 5 different tournaments a month. And if I manage to win this, it will be +1. So I'm pretty excited about that. Man, that best of 3 was pretty exhausting though, for sure. The second game was definitely a pretty nice scrap. Rusty saying I can join now. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and spectate. Throw up the screen blocker and we'll be diving right on in. All right, there we go. The updated tournament bracket. Hey. All right, looks like this is indeed the ace match. Let's go ahead and change the names of the opponents. It's going to be Vastaklat. I'm not, it feels like a bad word, but maybe that's just me. Against the Phoenix King. All right, both very common players on the ladder. We'll see how well they actually do in this final ace match against each other. The winner will be going on to face myself, so should be quite exciting. All right, they're figuring out the pick 3 system. For those who are unaware, the way it works is you pick 3 factions and you ban one. Your opponent removes one of the factions that you picked, and then from the and then counterpicks, and then you choose from the remaining 2. That's how it works out. Hey, Ice Power in chat, GG's, man. The Wood Elf game for sure was extremely scary. I think just like a little bit more, if I had used a little bit more ammunition, I would have been completely screwed over. But yeah, I can tell you've definitely practiced the matchup a lot, and versus many other builds, I probably would have gone run over. I developed the matchmaking add-on. That is correct, HK, yeah. If you take a look at this right here, that's not it. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Let's not accidentally... Oh, whoopsie daisies. All right, it's a good thing they didn't have any builds loaded. Oh my gosh. Let me load up the proper autumn blocker here. Oh my gosh. Oh, one day I will get used to doing this, but still not today. All right, we're nearly there. But yeah, so for those who are wondering, the Enticity ladder, a ladder designed for those who want to get some multiplayer practice on a tournament level without having to grind out quick battles or train or without having to find a clan. Well, we've just started a new season recently, where the elo has reset, and you can join by going to the Discord to the description below, joining my Discord, and queuing up with !Q. It's a pretty fun ladder. I made it myself, and it is constantly getting updates. And actually, something that I'm working on right now, I'm working on a map ban system for all of you who dislike things like Troll Country. So that should be pretty fun. There's like a lot of maps that people just don't want to practice on, and the ladder is aiming to give you guys as good practice as possible. So if you want to avoid the maps, hopefully by the end of today, I'll have that feature in place, which is pretty exciting. Yeah. Yeah, man, I feel a little bit off my game today. I don't know about you guys. I don't feel like tired, but it feels like I can't channel the same energy as I usually do. Or like, you know, it feels like I can't string together sentences as well, almost. It's strange. Oh, man. But here we go. Looks like the Phoenix King is ready. Is this the Vampire Counts versus Greenskin matchup? It looks like it is. Wow, he's counterpicking the Counts with Greenskins. Usually a bad matchup, but a lot of people will say it is even. What do you drink, tea or coffee? I drink water. Hydro homies, rejoice. Yep, just water. I very much dislike beer. I am not a fan of bitter foods in the slightest. So yeah, that is my flavoring of choice for sure. All right, now Greenskins versus Vampire Counts. Generally, the knowledge says that Vampire Counts is ahead in this matchup. The reason? Oh, Loopy, classy, man, with the wine. Oh my gosh. But back to the matchup. Vampire Counts, generally, people say they're ahead because if their single entities snipe out the Greenskin Lord, it's all over. Greenskin units do not have enough leadership to sustain the loss of their Lord, and they'll be terror routing for essentially the rest of the game. So, question is whether or not, most of it revolves around the Lord and how well they can stay safe. Meanwhile, the Greenskins are trying to return as much damage as they can over the course of the battle. And that's more or less how the matchup is decided. There's a bunch of tools for the greenskins, but usually they bring more or less the same thing. Stone trolls, savage orcs, and so on. And the Vampire Council bring a dragon for breath attacks on black orcs. And they want to have enough tools to beat a blob and a more wide build. CY saying whiskey, nice. Alcohol and Warhammer go pretty well together. I would beg to differ personally, but in terms of overall enjoyment, I would back that wholeheartedly. All right, some PCs loading in. Remember, an SSD is one of the best things for a quick Warhammer loading. We are not sponsored by any SSD company, but something to keep in mind. Although overall, I think this tournament has progressed fairly nicely, not too long of one. It looks like we should be in just a second. As the armies do load in for Russiclet, we are seeing Grom the Paunch coming in with his fairly standard kit, opting to take a few of the damage abilities too. River Trollhag with the Spirit Leech, definitely very nice. And the 8 Peak Loonies, some ROR fanatics, who will be quite scary for sure against any elite Vampire Count's forces. We've got 3 units of Savage Orc Archer Boys and Savage Orc Big Guns with some Stone Trolls. This is about as meta as you can get with a wide greenskin build. Oh my gosh! Arid Zephyr. That is a lot of money. Thank you very much. Yeah, that is absolutely huge, man. And hugely appreciated. Look at there, you can see the donation on my left over there, on your left. No, on your right. Oh god. But yeah, thank you very much. Not even messaging. What a Chad move, showing that I don't even know what it's showing, but thank you very much, showing that they're I guess well, I don't know. I don't want to be presumptuous, so I actually can't say anything about them except for thank you. Now, for the Vampire Count's army, we are seeing a Blood Dragon Lord, 2 Black Coaches, also very meta against the Greenskins, some Blood Knights, Varix Reavers, Lances and Barding, and Black Knights. Now, the special thing about Varix Reavers, if you did not know, they have regeneration, which is extremely good for Vampire Counts if they're expecting a long and drawn-out fight, like in this matchup. Blood Knights, extremely good against large targets. Really nice if you want to shut down giants, and so on. So overall, a fairly good Vampire Counts build. Not an especially strong front line, because they're not really relying on that to kill the Greenskin front line. Red Wedding Planner. So you stopped drinking coffee for a week and almost died. I've heard stories where not drinking coffee can be pretty brutal on your body, but thankfully I managed to dodge that bullet. In all of my years of school, I never really got into coffee, mostly because I just hate bitterness that much. So I think that might have helped me out. Now, some very meta builds from both sides. We'll see how well they actually play out though. The Blood Dragon Vampire Lord has a very high chance of being absolutely sniped here. So we'll see how well he actually holds up. The Phoenix King has played in many tournaments before, so I would think he'll have some... his Lord should be pretty safe. Meanwhile, for the Greenskins, it looks like they're opting for a bit of a partial forest envelopment to make sure that their right flank is a little bit safer, but this does leave their left flank pretty exposed. If the Vampire Counts wanted to, they could actually decide not to engage these guys and only to attack the guys on the far flank. They'll still have to deal with the archers though, which will be a little bit difficult. CY saying Blood Knights, one of the coolest units in the game. Indeed. And with the cavalry changes, they're going to be even scarier now. HK saying, yeah, if you addicted to something and stopped, it could be lethal. Oh, okay. I did not expect it to get that dark, but yeah. Coffee is pretty great though, from what I've heard. But on to the game. We have a match to talk about. There's no skirmish phase here, as neither side have skirmishers, but we are going to see some pretty nice cycle charging from the cavalry. This would be expected even before the cavalry update, and we're going to see some Night Slime into some goblins doing no damage. They actually did no damage to the goblins. Yeah, they did no damage on the charge. Wow. maybe a failed attack command, but they get punished for it pretty severely, and a Spirit Leech hitting the Black Coach. Very standard if you want to take that target out. Meanwhile, Grom looks like he's going to be charging the Necromancer, and he's getting focused down pretty heavily too by these archers. Overall, pretty bad start for the Vampire counts, as their mobility is actually running from the infantry they were meant to destroy. Grom slamming into the Necromancer, but a potential here for a big sniping attempt as the Dragon Lord does land in on Grom. All buffs are procced. Grom is going to be rather tanky, but the Blood Dragon Lord does insane amounts of damage. Lands 2 hits right off the bat, and Grom has to disengage. Gonna be pretty bad for Grom right off the bat. Makes up for the losses on the Vampire count side, but this overload for the Greenskins is definitely giving them a pretty nice lead. The Lord, Dragon Lord, dives in on Grom again. The Black Coaches too, one of them slipping through, will be chasing away the archers. But the Dragon Lord does get pinned down by the Stone Trolls, having to run away from them lest he get shut down. Black Coach moves in to stall out the Stone Trolls, but that almost will be spelling doom for the Black Coach unless it's able to get supported. But what is nice for the Vampire counts, they do shut down these range units. The Savage Orc Archer boys are going to get bogged down, but oh, another failed charge. They were targeting the other archers, and they actually don't get that much damage again. Now, meanwhile, Grom, it looks like a breath attack is going to be dropping on him. No, on the Stone Trolls instead, hitting a lot of the Vampire Count's infantry, unfortunately for them. But with another charge of the Vampire Count's Lord, it looks like the Stone Trolls might even get shattered here. That would be pretty rough for them, and it looks like they do get terror routed, not shattered. Now, the Necromancer will be going down. That's going to be very bad in terms of Winds of Magic for the counts, but not a necessary tool for the late game. Still, it's going to be a little bit brutal. And the Stone Trolls, they are breaking, but is there something to chase them off? We do have a couple Black Knights here that will be able to dive in, and it looks like Phoenix King catching that out. Very nice play, going to be chasing off those Stone Trolls so that they don't come back. That's a lot of gold value for him. That will be doing well. Meanwhile, another engagement on Grom, Dragon Lord missing most of his hits. Fanatics clipping some of the Blood Knights, getting pretty nice damage for a unit of Fanatics. And the Blood Knights, they are at 1/3 HP. The Stone Trolls, looks like nothing's going to be helping them. They will be off the battlefield. But Grom actually comes out of that charge fairly unscathed. The Dragon Lord looks like he will be trying to disengage to find a better position. But the balance of power overall, with all the infantry dead, is in the favor of the Greenskins. Now, this is one of the matchups where balance of power does not matter as much. And oh my goodness, another unit of Stone Trolls does get routed off. This is absolutely devastating for the Greenskins. This means that they will have no more mass heading on into the late game. And even if they do have an infantry advantage, these Black Coaches, they specialize in killing infinite amounts of infantry. And that's going to be pretty rough for them for sure. A huge breath attack here, catching out those goblins, and Savage Orcs will be taking them out also. And just like that, the balance of power goes back in the favor of the Vampire counts. How can Blood Knights do 0 damage to goblins? If you give a move command, they will not actually give their charges, which means that they won't give any impact charges, and thus give no damage. So sort of just walking towards the goblins. And not doing anything else. It's a really bad thing to give move commands for your cavalry for sure. Now, this pocket has been completely cleaned up. Those goblins will be going down soon. This Black Coach looks like it does have all of its buffs, so it will be taking 66% less damage. Absolutely huge. And in the late game, the Vampire counts are only going to get stronger. They have healing, they have regeneration, they have stronger single entities that get stronger as the battle goes on. And oh my gosh, the River Troll Hag absolutely gooned by a single attack here, and a zombie summon just to make sure she gets finished off. Meanwhile, for the Greenskins, they only really have Grom for regeneration. Now, while that is definitely quite strong, it's not going to be saving them by any means. And Grom, he's going to be diving in, finishing off the Blood Knights. That's going to be really nice for the Greenskins, but I don't think it's really going to be winning him any games. A really nice breath attack too on the Savage Orc Big Guns, plus a charge in from the Knights. It looks like it won't actually be terror routing them anytime soon, but it does put them in a pretty precarious situation for sure. River Troll Hag getting another huge charge from the Lord and a hit. The charge and the attack really absolutely brutal against these large entities here. that's going to mean the River Troll Hag is more or less off the battlefield now. Even if she does rally, it's still going to be a pretty rough time for her. As for the Vampire Counts, taking stock of their units, it's a single black coach, some knights, some more knights, and the Dragon Lord. Now, with the knight cycle charging, the Dragon Lord will be able to disengage without any rule breaks. And that's going to be pretty nice for him, for sure. As we've seen earlier in our matches before, staying in sustained combat is definitely a really bad idea. Ooh, River Troll Hag actually comes back to Spirit Leech, the Varix Weavers. That's actually really nice for her. But yeah, dragons, they don't do really well in sustained combat. They definitely want to be cycle charging as much as possible. It gives them extremely high efficiency on their engagements. And it looks like another zombie summon actually dropping to catch out these archers. Once these archers are down, it's just going to be these guys left. And that means that there's not a lot really to snipe out the black coach. As you can see, it has really nice mass plowing through those greenskin infantry units. And it's barely going to be taking any damage as it bounces around, unless it gets caught up. And it looks like it does, but that only gives a good anvil for the hammer to drop, and that's going to be slamming into these orcs. Meanwhile, Grom takes another charge. He's Helm of Discorded, but he actually doesn't take too many hits. Looks like the Dragon Lord targeting him, but not getting in the attack animations it wants. Grom, surviving against all odds, manages to disengage, and he might be the tool to take out this black coach. If the black coach does go down, the infantry could very well win it for the Vampire Counts. And the question is there any healing here? And does it even matter, because the Dragon Lord comes back in, the big brother, to support the black coach, and it starts wailing in on Grom. It looks like he did manage to get a hit and a second one, which means Grom will be leaving the battlefield very soon, but not by running, by getting completely deleted by that Dragon Lord, and that does cause army losses for the Greenskins. And the Vampire Counts will be taking the win. The game number 3, Phoenix King, coming on out with the Vampire Counts victory. Although the game was pretty contested, as you saw, the single entities here. Just a little bit too brutal for the Greenskins. 4,444 value. Very nice value there. Gonna be annihilating all the single entities. And I think the big play here, shutting down the Stone Trolls early, was really integral to the victory of Phoenix King. He managed to chase them off, and making sure that he had some cavalry nearby definitely helped him out. For the Greenskins, they did really well. Some pretty nice value on their guys too, but the archers getting shut down really was what ended it for them. So there we go. That's the ace match done. Okay, I'm coming into the lobby. Which means for the grand finals, it's gonna be me against the Phoenix King. All right. It's gonna be ODM. Whoops, ODM. Enticity against the Phoenix King, who's going to be at 0 wins, and I too will be at 0 wins. All right, here we go. Now, we'll see if I can pull it through for the extra tournament. Oh boy, here we go in the grand finals of the tournament today. It looks like I'm pretty sure I am the person that's picking first. It's going to be a Stallion Tomb. A pretty sketchy map for Vampire Coast. I think I will go Beastmen again and ban out I'll probably ban the Wood Elves and the Dark Elves as my standard bans. That seems pretty good. And we'll see if the Phoenix King has a strong counter here. Yeah, AC Maiden, that was a pretty good scrap, but the matchup, unfortunately, it is pretty tough indeed. Looks like the Phoenix King looking to go for some High Elf shenanigans. That should be pretty fun. Let's go ahead and update the leaderboard real quick. There we go. And let's see. Nice. All right. So we got the Phoenix King going for his High Elves. Now, Phoenix King, very nice High Elf player. Recently featured, actually, on a Human Boy stream. You can check him out, where he talked for a good few hours about High Elves. So that means that he will very likely be quite prepared for this matchup. And I'll have to be a little bit careful for sure. Let's see now, how do I actually want to play this out? There are a few ways to do this. But But yeah, well, we'll see. If anyone in chat thinks you can predict my my play style here, feel free to send her in. Let's see. That's J Phoenix. Oh my gosh, Loopy. That's right. That's right, Loopy. The two Phoenixes. Darn it. Yes, that was J Phoenix, not the Phoenix King. Well, I'm sorry for having betrayed you all, giving the incorrect person. Overhyping the Phoenix King, but I'm sure they've played their fair share of elves. Let's see. Let's see. Why we have no grade guard with halberds? It's beyond you. Grade guard. I assume you mean grave guard, of course. With halberds, you know, that would actually be pretty cool. I dig it. Maybe it's the wood on the halberds just all rotted away or something. But then there's spears. Who knows? Maybe they just didn't want to bloat the roster. We'll never know. Sheeps into the sunset. That's a very good guess. A very good guess indeed. Let's see. I need to decide which lord I want to take too. There are a few things. For example, the high elves can go for a lot of sniping on my units that I definitely would not want. Glade guard with halberds. Can we just give halberds to everything? That would be nice. I'm sure many people would enjoy that immensely. Let's see. But anyways, I need to figure out my lord. Who will be leading the charge today? I did lose a game using Torox before against the mighty Xiphos, having getting completely ruined by his Phoenix with its crazy fire resist damage. So I don't know if I will exactly be going for that again. That was definitely pretty rough. Dual halberds? Oh my gosh. Wouldn't that be something? Let's see, how do I feel about this? Yeah, this is pretty nice. This is pretty nice indeed. Okay. So I got my Lord core more or less set up. I think this guy, I'll do this. I'll take that item. And then I have to just decide what my front line is going to consist of. The High Elves don't have a whole ton of things that they can really field, but their cavalry is probably the scariest thing out of all the various options we could see. They have a lot of monsters that could do quite a bit too, so I have a lot to worry about for sure. The map is fairly small though, and you know what, maybe I'll see if I can use that to my advantage. Maybe we will see. Let's see here. The new, oh, Cathay. Looks like they can do that. Dual halberds. Really? I don't think so. I don't think I saw a dual halberd unit for Cathay. Abyssal Terrorism mount? I've never heard of that. Is that some sort of, what is that? Let me know. Let's see now. How many dogs do I want to take? That's the real question. Dogs are pretty amazing, but I sort of feel like I want more cavalry. You know what? Ooh, it's sketchy. It's sketchy for sure. What are the high elves? You know what? Let's take some dogs. Why not? This seems like a good enough build. Staunch line of Ungor spearmen. Sadly, that does not exist. That does not exist at all. Man, the poor Ungors. Poor Ungors. Alright, but I think this should be a pretty fun game. I got a good amount of strong tools here. Things might look a little bit familiar once we load in. Because this army is not the same as the one I played against Bretonia, but it has the same idea going on. High Elves are much like Bretonia on many levels, but they have many monsters that change up how the matchup is played a tiny bit. And that's what I'll have to really be worrying about. As I don't have a lot of anti-monster play here. And I'll mostly want to be trying to overrun the High Elf formation. Oh, whoops. I just noticed. You guys didn't have desktop audio for the longest time. You just couldn't hear the game. And I did not even notice. Well, game sound should be working now. So that should be pretty good. We'll see what armor we have once we load in. Ooh, alright. Now this map is decent for coast, but there are a few Vanguard positions. And overall, I don't really enjoy playing Vampire Coast on Vanguard maps. It just adds a little bit to RNG and that can really mess me up. Now, for my army, what we see here, it's going to be a ton of Ungor Raiders, as is my favorite unit of chaff to pick, as they are so cheap. I have 3 units of dogs. They're going to be taking the back line, ready to charge into any high elves that I see. Mostly, though, I want to make sure that they are relatively safe. We got my caster over here, who can actually play pretty far aggressively forwards. And the classic chariots will be bouncing back and forth between the high elf infantry. So the infantry fight should more or less go my way. I think the cavalry fight should actually go pretty well in my favor too. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I'm tempted to vanguard these guys in the far back there. It looks like my opponent is ready, so you know what? Let's do it. Let's just do it for the lulz. Let's get my dogs over here to support my lord. Same with my skirmishers. Good luck, have fun. And let's start the battle. Alright, here we go. So here we go. Here's the high elf formation. It looks like the spears facing forwards. They're archers. They might have a lot of stealth here. There are the fireborn. And it looks like most of the archers actually on the front line. The cavalry, they're going to be pulling forwards, but actually I don't want to engage this just yet. Let's go ahead and just move up with these forces. And I mostly just want to make sure that I'm getting good charges with my cavalry. I also don't want my archer to take too much damage from the vicious volleys of the high elf. They will be using some traitor kings to hopefully catch out and kill some very elite dragon princes. Meanwhile, Koroks and these guys are going to be moving in through the back. I do botch a little bit of a charge on the side there, but overall the fight is going pretty well in my favor. Tuskor chariots are going to be bouncing on in now, and with this back line shut down for the high elves, I'm feeling pretty confident. Especially, wow, look at those units of cavalry. They got absolutely mulched. And man, with the combination of the Traitorkin, yeah, they had a really rough time indeed. Shadow Warriors are going down too. And now that I am in sustained combat, let's go ahead and give some extra melee attack to my Lord. And he's going to be trying to finish off the cavalry. We'll go ahead and throw in a gray screen too, to really try and finish these guys off. It looks like I have managed to rout off a couple of the Dragon Princes, but there are more left in the battle, so I will have to be a little bit careful. These guys specifically are going to be quite scary, and I really want to make sure my cavalry is getting in a solid charge against them. So let's go ahead and pull them back. The cavalry gets stopped by my spears a little bit, and that gives me a really nice counter charge. Meanwhile, the routing dragon princes are going to get chased off. I was waiting for them to break away so that I could actually run them down. And it seems like these dragon princes on the flank, they won't be able to do too much. My caster will be continuing to throw down his AoEs, as that's the fastest way to rout off these spearmen. And with the Shadow Warriors having a rough time, I'm feeling pretty confident. Alariel has landed too, which is a perfect opportunity to actually get my Lord on top of her. Some of the Shadow Warriors are alive though, but my priority is chasing off the Dragon Princes. The Shadow Warriors aren't especially scary, as long as I have units running them down. So even if they do rally, I can mostly just ignore them for the most part. And you can see here, now that the cavalry is gone, I'm focusing on the archers, and I'm not paying attention that much to these spearmen. The idea is that my chariots are so effective against them in the late game that I'm not really worried if I take inefficient trades there. Even if there are a lot of spears by the end of the game, they're not exactly much of a threat. And as the high elves hit army losses, that will be a pretty straightforward Beastman victory. Really nice there. I think the punishing of this unit of Dragon Princes was really the winning play there. Overcast What's it? Overcast Trader King will kill 14 models of cavalry. That means about a third of their HP is gone immediately. And that's really rough for them. The other Dragon Princes did fairly well for themselves, but still I outnumbered them pretty drastically, which means my remaining forces could disrupt the rest of the High Elf formation. And then that's basically all I needed to do to pull out a pretty clean victory. So GG, Phoenix King saying that was fast. Indeed, such is the way with the Beastmen. Torox the Brass Bull, excited to see the Doom Bull doing well. Pretty straightforward, and now we're moving on to the next map, and I will get to counterpick my opponent with the same advantage as before, where I have my Vampire Coast pick, which really means that he'll probably have to ban it in the majority of situations. The map is going to be Northern Chaos Wastes too. A map that is fairly large, but the hill in the middle does make things a little bit sketchier for sure. It looks like he's going to go for the Wood Elves, possibly. Not a bad pick. Torox against High Elves can be tricky because of the fire resistance. Ah yes, I learned that the hard way. If you watch Milk and Cookies, actually, I think he cast a game between myself and Zyphos where that exact thing happened. And it was absolutely brutal. A Phoenix was tanking Torox for the entire battle, and I ended up losing because of it. Those are Tuskor Chariots. Always take Tuskor Chariots. They are much cheaper, and they do about the same amount of damage. And there we go, it's a Wood Elf pick, banning the Bretonians and the Lizardmen. Definitely fairly good. Now, as for the counters, there are a variety. Bretonia and Lizardmen are gone, but I do have the Greenskins, of course, who can be rather fearsome. And I also have, you know, I could play the Empire, a very classic counterpick to the Wood Elves. And overall, I think Greenskins is a tiny bit stronger. Tomb Kings can also do well against them, but I've lost that a couple times before, and I sort of want to keep working on that one. So I'm thinking the Greenskin pick is probably the safer bet. We'll see if the Phoenix King has what it takes to beat a rather bad matchup for the Wood Elves. The patch for the Wood Elves did help for sure, but overall it's still going to be a little bit scary. Let's see here, I'll have to shuffle around a few of my units though first, since this old build is a little bit outdated, but as soon as that's done, I think we will have a fairly scary army here. Alright, so this is looking pretty good. This is looking pretty good indeed. How are Wild Riders doing in the beta? They're mostly the same as before. You just don't want to... Well, you can charge into, you know, spears and so on, but if they're braced, they still won't do that much damage. The main thing is that, like, something like Bestigors won't annihilate Wild Riders on the charge. They can actually trade evenly into Bestigors now. So in many late game situations, I think Wood Elves are feeling a little bit more comfortable than they were before. Let's see. How do I want to round out this build, though? I guess I can do this. This feels okay. This feels very okay indeed. Let's go ahead and take... I'll have to take a look at my spells. I guess all this more or less works out. But I will want a little bit of magic damage to deal with the Sylvan Knights. Sylvan Knights are an absolute pain to deal with. And if you don't have magic damage against them, things can get rough real fast. So I'll have to see. Yeah, the Wild Riders got armor piercing nerfed? When was this? Was this recently or a long time ago? Alright, you know what? Let's do a bit of this action, why don't we? Update the scoreboard? Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, we are indeed up one game. But yeah, the main thing is Sylvan Knights and Blobs are the scariest thing for the Greenskins here. So you have to be really careful that you don't get caught off guard by that. If you can manage that, you are more or less in a pretty nice position though. And I think my army is more or less ready. I feel fairly confident about it. Is it a perfect spend? It's not, which does hurt me slightly, but otherwise I think we're in a pretty good place. It was a frenzy change. Oh, okay. That's a very minor. Isn't that a very minor? Oh, actually, no, it's not, because yeah, it used to be all on the side of normal damage, but overall, though, I think Wild Riders, they still, you should still take them in a good number of matchups, but they are hurt a tiny bit. And they're definitely not beasts. It's not going to be a huge cavalry meta by any means. Yeah, everyone wants to see units buffed, though, but still, you just, at some point, you have to accept that some units will be not as good. Unfortunately. If you do want to throw a unit into the meta, though, just nerf their gold by 100, or boost or buff it by 100. So decrease it, make Wild Riders cost 1,000 easy. They're instantly meta. But yeah, that can always be a little bit sketchy. There is a fine balance when it comes to managing units, where if you're not careful, some units might become extremely dominant in many matchups. Imagine Mortis Engine actually being good? Yeah, it is. It's called the Fey Enchantress. Alright, now here we go. We got Grom. We got 2 casters. We got magic damage for Sylvan Knights. A countercharge of Squigs. That's gonna be insane. What's considered a super weapon? Mortis? Yeah. But anyways, I don't think Fey Enchantress is considered a super weapon though. But it doesn't really matter when it comes to Bretonia. They don't really span many single entities at all, so it actually has very little impact overall. For my army, I have some goblins. Now these goblins, I'm going to test something out a bit. They're going to be 8 ranks deep, or at least quite deep, and I'm going to brace against the charges of the Wood Elves as much as I can. This should, in theory, keep my poor gobos from getting annihilated on the charge, but we'll have to see how that plays out. I'm going very wide so I can catch out any kiting shenanigans that go on. And then I got my front line of skirmishers, who are going to be doing their best to trade and waste the ammunition of the Wood Elves. So my opponent is ready. We can start the battle and dive right on in. I have to be super careful that Grom doesn't get sniped out, though. Ooh, the Vikings think the super weapon idea is a dumb concept. Oh my gosh, not a fan of that, apparently. Now, the initial volley does come out for the Wood Elves. I do get a fairly nice dodge there, but this looks like I'm going to have to rush. So I simply bring out all my infantry to simply march forwards as fast as they can. And then as these Wild Riders get a little bit too close, I might actually be able to catch them out. I would much rather, though, catch these Deepwood Scouts, though, as they are much better pickings here. And let's go ahead and throw down that slow. Alright, so my cavalry is going to be moving in. My skirmishers are going to be firing away. And then we'll see if I can catch these guys out. The Wild Riders didn't do too much damage on the impact, which helps me out quite a bit. Grom can more or less just suicidally charge in. There's no real fear there, as if he does get charged by the Wild Riders, he can proc his defensive abilities. For these guys, they are getting caught out by my cavalry, so they will be going down for sure. And then with a big ol' infantry charge, these Wild Riders should have a pretty hard time. There's an eagle. It dived in on Grom. I have to be a little bit wary there, as Grom will be taking a lot of damage if I'm not too careful, but with the Lucky Banner procced, that's going to be more than enough to keep him safe. Meanwhile, Wild Riders on the flank, they're doing pretty good work against my forces here. But on the right flank, I've routed off all the Wood Elf cavalry, which is a pretty extreme lead for me, I do think. Sisters of Twilight are going to be a bit annoying, though. But as long as I continue pushing forwards and winning this cavalry advantage, I should be able to catch out the rest of the forces of the Wood Elves. Some more Wild Riders come in. I don't have time to brace for a charge, so I will just counter charge to get as much damage as I can. And my skirmishers are specifically moving in to catch the Sisters of Twilight. Grom's doing his best to chase down the Wild Riders, but it looks like their speed might actually get them out of there. Unfortunately for me, But overall, I'm still pretty ahead here. Squig Hoppers, an absolutely amazing unit too. They're able to just consistently run down units, as they are extremely fast. That's going to be helping me out a lot. And as the Sisters of Twilight try to get disengaged, I can even slow them down so that my archers can continue wailing on them. Meanwhile, the entirety of the Wood Elf melee cavalry force is shut down, except for, I guess, a couple Wild Riders here, who are doing decently against my infantry, despite getting countercharged, but they're not trading that effectively. As I said earlier, cavalry, they are better in this patch, but they're not going to be able to annihilate infantry by any means. They'll still take a lot of damage from countercharges for sure, and that's going to be hurting them quite a bit. Vindictive Players on the Sisters of Twilight 2 now is going to be slowly burning them down, and over the course of the game, this little goblin is going to be getting a ton of value for me for sure. Meanwhile, my skirmishers constantly poking away the Sisters. They are actually tanking fairly well here. I guess they do have 50% resistance to missiles with their physical resist. So it's going to be a little bit of a task before they actually go down. I am braced for the charge here too. Let's see how much damage I take. A decent amount of damage, but not too much. And overall, that buys time for my skirmishers to get in a little bit more value. Sisters of Twilight will be eating another Vindictive Glare too, coming on right up. I have a lot of Winds of Magic, so this is a really easy spell to spam. And it's very efficient when you're just spamming it out at normal cast, as it does quite a bit. Now, I am going to be throwing down Fanatics to hit up these Wild Riders. This will absolutely annihilate them. But yeah, Vindictive Glare, even though it did get nerfed, it only got nerfed from its overcast. Its normal cast is still just as effective as before. And actually, I should have been slowing down the cavalry too to really punish them. But this should still work out too. I'll be able to catch them with my cavalry, and they should be going down rather swiftly. Grom is still very high on HP, and while my skirmishers have taken a bit of a large beating, overall I am pretty ahead here in the battle, I would say. Especially now Grom coming in, he will be able to support my cavalry. They should be able to win that fight very handily here. And it's just going to come down to whether or not the Sisters of Twilight can get some insane sniping going on. I don't really think so, though. And with another Vindictive Glare dropping in on top of them, that one actually missing a little bit. Still, though, I don't think the Wood Elves have enough ammunition to really win it. They're doing a lot of their shotgun blasts to deal with my infantry, but we still have quite a numerous amount. In fact, even a full HP unit of Orc Boys just chilling out in the far distance. Sisters of Twilight land, too. The Wood Elves are moving on in for their final engagement, but Grom has procced both of his buffs, so he's actually not too worried here at all. My skirmishers will be back soon enough by the end of the battle. I don't have any AoEs here, unfortunately, so I can't really decisively win this fight. If you take a look at my Fanatics... Oh, no, never mind, I do have an AoE. So there we go, we'll just drop some Fanatics on these Glade Riders, and they're going to be getting absolutely mulched. They don't really have much to do to escape, and with a big ol' slow, the Sisters of Twilight will be able to be run down too, without even getting to their healing. And there we go, that's going to be it. The Wood Elves getting run down by the forces of the Greenskins, despite the cavalry changes. These poor Wild Riders, they just don't trade very well into Greenskins at all. Oh my gosh, look at them. They did real bad. Oh, none of the Wild Riders paying for themselves. The Deepwood Scouts did a bit better. Sisters of Twilight did okay too. But overall, Greenskin units it's very inefficient to actually shoot them down. The mobility really overrunning things. And that means the victor of today's tournament is gonna be me. Yes. Oh man, that's a bit awkward, but hey, that means that we will be able to actually host another tournament sooner rather than later. So that's actually very exciting, guys. I think I might actually host a ranked tournament, possibly on Monday, maybe even the weekend, which is going to be pretty nice. Yeah, it was pretty rigged. I did have a bye too, so I didn't have to face against Call Harmon. So you know what? That's just how I like to play it. I just rig all my tournaments with two 2-0s coming on in today. Oh my gosh, it's been a while since I got to play in my own tournaments, but definitely very fun. So thank you very much, everybody coming in to watch. For anyone who's interested, by the way, I also do non-stream content on this channel, where I go into some very deep analysis onto my games. My most recent video is actually one that I am very happy with, so check that out if you're at all interested in more content. The latter is sponsored by our lovely patrons too, as you can see over there in the bottom left. So I think with, oh yeah, and special shout out to them, of course, too. Red Wedding Planner, who has been in the chat for this tournament, Roman Cool, and Biblington for being very generous supporters of the ladder. So all that out of the way, I think I'm mostly set, and I will see you guys hopefully sometime soon. Oh, how do I close the webcam?